always, I want to encourage people. Everybody sits near the back, and then what happens is people come in late and they have to crawl over people. So if anybody feels inclined to fill in a couple of these seats, this would be the time to do it. But seeing nobody actually so inclined, I made the spiel. I'm Blair Rubel. I'm director of the Wilson Center's new program on global sustainability and resilience, of which the Comparative Urban Studies Project, CUSP, is a part. And I'd like to welcome you to the center. This is going to be a really nice meeting, I know. I want to also note that we have a number of different sponsors, but before I turn to them, it is appropriate that Lauren Herzer is standing here because I want to point Lauren out. She's the person who really made it possible to have the meeting here today and to get everybody here. So thank you, Lauren. I also want to mention some of our Wilson Center co-sponsors, the Environmental Change and Security Program, the Africa Program, the Latin America Program. We are very proud of participating in what is now a third competition for academic papers examining the best ways to strengthen ties between urban policy making, scholarly work on urban development, and to disseminate evidence-based work by younger scholars. And this has been, I think, a model of cooperation among a number of different institutions. USAID's Urban Programs Team, the International Housing Coalition, Cities Alliance, and the World Bank, and as well as the Wilson Center. And I think it is a sign that urban studies and the field of urban development have people who feel custodianship for trying to ensure that the field has a future. And you only have to read the papers, and you'll hear from some of the people here today to understand that the future is actually very bright because there's a lot of intellectual excitement here. This project wouldn't have been possible without many colleagues, but especially Nancy Leahy from USAID, there she is, and Susan Hill, you'll hear from in a moment, and Anjali Bean from the International Housing Coalition helped make this meeting possible. I hope you have picked up the publication outside, which has some of the papers in it. Unfortunately, Sandy played havoc with some of our travel schedules, and Allison Bridges and Simone Lavitz from USAID aren't going to be able to be here, but we have a half dozen speakers, which is more than enough for the time. So I hope you grabbed a biography sheet on your way in as well, because I'm not going to repeat this information. And now I want to ask Susan Hill to say a few words of welcome as well. IHC has been a great partner in this and other adventures. And Susan, it's always great working with you and with Bob and your colleagues.
Thank you. Well, I really just wanted to echo what Blair already said, that we are so excited to be part of this for the third year. And we think it's a really exciting opportunity to encourage more scholarship on these issues that are so important to us. So Marika, who was our grand prize winner, actually got to travel to the World Urban Forum this summer in Naples, Italy. So that was a really great opportunity for her, and got to present her paper there as well. And then we wanted to have the students to have a chance to come here to Washington. And as Blair mentioned, there was a fourth student who couldn't make it due to travel difficulties following the hurricane, but wanted to have the students to have the opportunity to meet with some experts in their field and to get some exposure to Washington and get to share their findings with us and to learn from folks here as well. So we're just so thankful. I just wanted to mention also that this idea was conceived 3-4 years ago by Jessica Rosen at USAID, and then has really been put into practice with the help of all of these 5 sponsors, and it's been a great team effort. And please, as Blair mentioned, pick up the publication as you leave. It's also available online, so you can send the link out and around, but we want to make sure that gets shared and spread around as much as possible. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the students and Blair.
Good. Well, we're right on time. The plan is we have paired paper givers and discussants. And actually, I was asked, is this the order they're going to appear in? I just realized, no, this is alphabetical order. But I will, let me announce what the pairings are so the speakers know when they're speaking. First, we'll hear from Lindsay Carter, and she will be paired with Jolene Sanchik. Then we'll hear from Valerie Stahl, and she'll be paired with Ellen Hamilton. And then finally, we'll hear from Marika Salakis and Patricia Flanagan. And the idea is to have about a half hour for each pairing. I hope that within that half hour, there'll be time for clarifying questions, and then we should have 15, 20 minutes for general discussion at the end. So with that, let me turn the floor over to Lindsay Carter from the Office of Capacity Building and Development at USAID Foreign Agricultural Services. And she'll be paired with Jolene Sanchik from the Technical Services Division of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And Lindsay's paper is entitled Exploring the Effectiveness of Urban Agricultural Producer Organizations in Securing Land Tenure, 2 case studies from Cotonou, Benin. Lindsay?
Okay. Should I just start up the presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Carter, and the paper I'm going to present this morning was representative of my master's thesis, which I just completed at Cornell University this May. And it's based on research that I conducted in May 2011 during the summer when I took the time to speak with urban agricultural producers in Benin. My first experience of going to Cotonou was in 2008, and I served for 2 years in the country as a Peace Corps volunteer. So a lot of the language and the cultural skills that I put into this research also came from that time. So I wanted to begin with a picture of Benin to sort of understand the land market and the area we're dealing with. Benin is located in West Africa, Francophone country, right next to Nigeria, and Cotonou as a city itself is landlocked at the best, and it's a very narrow, low-lying piece of land. To the south, there is the coast. To the south is the coast, and to the north is the lake. And this area, it's narrow, low-lying, and has experienced a large amount of population growth over the last few years. And this has contributed to a high increased pressure on open land and a densification of the city. During my time in Benin, I focused on 2 market gardens. These are market-orientated urban agriculture. And I looked at 2 parts in my paper. I was looking at the contributed factors in these market gardens that led to differences in the security of their access to land. And I looked at the implications of the perceived land security and what that meant for the urban agricultural producers. The urban agricultural producers I'm talking about are they are practicing urban agriculture as a source of employment. It is a year-round activity, and they are producing high-value produce. There are 9 market gardens in total in Benin, and in Cotonou, and together they total 70% of the high-value produce that comes into the city. And this includes lettuce, carrots, cabbage, and a number of irrigated vegetables. These are not for subsistence use by the farmers themselves, but are going into the marketplaces. And the areas of the city that I focused on was the area of High Vive, which is a upper income neighborhood. It's where a lot of the embassies are found, a lot of the expatriate population who make up, who consume a lot of high value produce. The 2 areas I look at have the same, on paper, they have the same access to land. They are not recognized occupants of the land, but they have informal agreements with the landowners. The landowners for both of the site to the north is Hawahiho, it's approximately 25 hectares, and then the Kokotie site to the south, which is 4 hectares. This area of open land, they're both owned by ASECNA, which is the aviation and navigation authority for Africa and Madagascar, which operates Kajun Airport in Cotonou, which is the main international airport. This is vacant land, and the actual characteristics of the land is extremely different and distinct. So, without further ado, this is the site of Hawahiho. This site to the north is owned by ASECNA. It's actually the clearance area for the runway, so the lights that can be seen in this picture are the landing lights for the aircraft, and this is an open area that the airplanes are flying over. And it is being used for urban agriculture. It was established in 1971, and it has been an area for urban agriculture. At all this time, it has remained largely unchanged. Surrounded by a wall, there are approximately 100 urban agriculture producers or marishers producing on this site. And there are some distinct, and it is acknowledged in the local community as a site of urban agriculture. This is in direct contrast to the second site that I looked at, which was Kokotie. This is a much smaller site that is to the south of the airport. It is also owned by ASECNA, and with both of these sites, it is agreed upon between the agricultural producers and those living it is agreed between the producers and ASECNA that the producers are allowed to occupy the site, use it for urban agriculture, so long as they maintain it, but it is unclear if ASECNA should choose to use the site and develop it, that the farmers face eviction. And this has happened with the site in Kokotie, which the land is also owned by ASECNA, but the group itself, entitled CMC, has been displaced at a number of times. Since 1981, they were originally at the site of a hotel, and as development has encroached on the region, so their activity has been displaced. Currently, the yellow area shows their current site. It is there are no fences around the site. There's about approximately 25 farmers there. It's only 4 hectares, and in my own interviews with the producers, they are vulnerable to eviction and they feel the pressure constantly upon them. This brings me to the findings of my paper, which were that as far as perceived land insecurity, the differences that came between my interviews with those at the site of Hawahiho and those at the site of Kokotie is that the location, the characteristics of the site, the fact that the land at Hawahiho needs to be kept clear for airport purposes is distinctly different from the Kokotie site, which is vulnerable to development, and there's no need to keep the land clear. It's just waiting to be developed as far as ASECNA sees it. The history of establishment. Kokotie is not recognized in the local community as an agricultural site. It is seen as temporary and is just being used for agricultural production as a means to get by as a temporary measure. The actual occupiers of the site, as to how organized the urban producer organizations are, is to a lesser extent important into perceived land security. It is true that those at the Hauehiho site are better organized and do perhaps have a more formal, slightly more perceived formal relationship with a SECNA as far as presidents talking to presidents, but it's unknown. And then, as far as I wanted to talk more on the implications of the perceived land insecurity. At the Hauehiho site, it's a distinct difference. You see irrigation systems in place. There are pumps. There are the farmers have taken the time to invest in equipment that is going to help with the drudgery of the work, is going to improve their yields, and overall increase their economic productivity. They've chosen to make the investment. This is different from Kokotie, where they're using forage holes. It's a lot of hand watering, and when I asked about investment, many of the farmers responded, it's a great idea, but they had a feeling of temporary occupation, that it wasn't going to work in this instance. And then there's also this perceived land security. Although it's the same, NGOs and institutions were far more willing to work with the groups at Hauehiho site, the more seemingly established site, than at Kokotie, which was more isolated. This was a compost project that Oxfam and had partnered with a local NGO, which involved taking urban waste, transforming it into compost that could then be used at the site or sometimes sold on for profit. So just to quickly conclude the main findings of my paper, there's the importance of land security reality, but I've stressed in this point, while both sites are seen the same way by the Kootenai authorities, they both have informal agreements, the perception of land security is incredibly important. And also how these perceptions of land security factor in to the activities taking the site. And this is certainly a cyclical process. The more that investment is put into the land, is put into the agricultural activity, the more it reinforces the perception of security and permanence. And I don't want to, when I was defending this thesis, my advisor does a lot of work on informal housing in India. And as she pointed out, I think it's incredibly true. These findings aren't limited to urban agriculture or even economic activity, or even to Kootenai, but they can be found in informal housing, as far as investments that people put into construction, into utilities, showing that the perception of land security is important, but absent of that, land reform is required, and that the feeling of temporary of eviction, the threat of eviction, is always going to lead to less investment in housing, in the activity that is taking place on that land. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for being right on time. Jolene?
Okay, thank you. So first I just want to congratulate all the students. This is exciting, and also the sponsors for creating a forum for student research to get into our conversations here in Washington. Just really briefly, it was interesting for me to read this paper. MCC had a very